Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have this generator. Picked up spares repairs, figured let's try and get this thing running, let's try and get this making some power and hopefully have ourselves a working, running generator. Stay tuned. So this has a Honda GX200 engine, which are quite nice engines. I do like working on these. And it comes with a Clarke power 3.4 kVA, so that is actually pretty decent. It runs at 115 and 230 volts. So it comes with two outlets. You have the 110, 115 volts, and we have the 230, 240 output. The guy included this extension lead, but for the time being, let's see if we can okay, so I didn't notice that before. It's not attached. In fact, it's missing screws from the bottom. Okay, so I think the previous owner has been inside of this. I can maybe accept these if came loose or vibrations maybe, but to be completely missing, not too sure about that. So these wires are all loose. They should be all tied up, and this should be pushed into there. Also, this has snapped off. In fact, it's barely even hanging on, which is great. The sticker has actually been removed on the bottom side, which is where this bolts up, which could mean this has actually been off the engine at some point. I did not notice that before. The bar is missing. Someone has cut this off. Okay, so the guy I got this from, he said he got this from a garage sale 2 or 3 years ago. When he picked up, it ran fine, and then apparently the other day he tried to start it, it would not start. He mentioned something about the fuel. Yeah, I think he said the fuel had ran down through the carb into the sump. So that means the oil will be obviously no good. You definitely don't want to run an engine on fuel and a tiny bit of oil, so that needs to be addressed, of course. But you did say it was producing power and it was running fine. Now I know everyone can pretty much say that on the spares repairs just to get you to buy this. So I think the first thing to check would be the oil. As long as it's not full of water, it's happy days. I actually don't think this has oil, which is, well, that's worrying. So the frame is, well, it's not in great condition. It's obviously starting to peel. It could do with a respray for sure. That might be actually something I may do. As you can see, the earth cable has been detached. The reason for that is because this mount is not attached. Let's have a look in the fuel tank. It's pretty decent. Okay, so the fuel tank itself, it's not too bad. I can clean it out. There's no rust. Just a bit of grime and dirt. But that should be okay. Let's start with removing stuff that we don't need actually on the generator to get this thing running. We'll start with this. Wow, that is has this been left on because it just will not come off? Is that what the situation is here? Because that is well and truly on there. So I managed to get it out. Unfortunately, this terminal here, this is your live pin, and it is melted. That's why it was stuck. That was kind of my worry. These should just fall straight out, but as you guys can see, this pin here, this is your live, and it is melted. There's bits of plastic on the pin and on the socket. It's pretty grubby, but the capacitor is okay. The wiring seems okay, so that's something good to take away from this. I think we should get the end cap off and have a look at the windings, the rotor, and just see, well, make sure nothing's melted, make sure it's hopefully okay. I'm not quite sure where this generator was actually ran, but it was obviously quite a dirty environment. That that should be nice and clean. It is not. The rope around the windings seems to be intact. The wires up here all seem okay. Looks bad, but functional wise, yeah, it might be okay. Probably not, but it might. So we know there's not much oil in this, but we need to get that out. Oh wow, that's tight. Tell you what, let's use a socket. Jeez. Who put that on? Okay, that's not good. So that is definitely not a good thing. So I think next, before putting oil in the engine, let's get this mount on the back side fixed, because we cannot start it with it doing this. So I don't have one of these spare. I have mounts, but I have the ones of the Chinese generators, which are kind of at an angle. So I think the best thing to do would be to just drill straight through this and put a bolt all the way through, top to bottom. It's not ideal, but it'll definitely work for the time being. So this would normally look something like that, and that's what you want really, because you want that bit of flex in the middle. But unfortunately, one side has perished and the other side was not far from it. Put the washers on. Okay, so you need an earth cable because you do not want to get a zap off your generator. So let's put a new end on, and then that can be hooked up to the stand and the actual engine itself. Okay, so the earth strap is attached. We have the engine, and if we touch the frame, we have contact. But more importantly, if we go to the earth terminals, which is this one and this one, we have contact. So this is now safe. There's a very good chance that this is being connected via the bolt, because the bolt is connecting to the block and it is connecting to the frame. Always like to make sure that the frame is grounded to the engine, because you do not want to touch this frame and get 240 volts jumping through your body. That will put you, well, that'll give you pretty much a bad day. So I think it's time to put some oil in this thing, and hopefully it won't leak. That's good enough for me. That's pretty much full. So next is the fuel. So the tank needs a clean, but for the time being I'll just put some fuel in and see if we can get this thing to run. If it does, I'll probably take this off and clean it, and obviously put it back in, clean the filter and put it back in. But for now, I'm just going to add some fuel. I have turned the fuel on a few minutes ago and we're not leaking, so that's a good sign. Engine is set to on, so let's give this a pull and see if we can get this thing to run. So it is the next day. I did some work on this, trying to figure out what was actually going on. Terminals that go to the capacitor, we have a rub through here which has rubbed on the actual housing. So if we test this capacitor, this is an 18 UF, so if we check what reading we get, 7.27. So this is giving out just under half of what it should be, and if you remember, the voltage was half of what it should be, so I think this is the problem. So this is our new capacitor, and this is also 18, and as you can see, once it comes up, 18.07. So we'll put this back on and hopefully this will fix the power issue. Before we test this, I think it is smart to actually remove this cable tie and tape up these wires and put it all back together, and make sure we put plenty of tape around this section because you do not want this rubbing through once again. The capacitor is hooked back up, it's all taped off, so hopefully we should be okay to test this out. I have my multimeter connected to the live and the neutral of the 230-240 system, so hopefully this should read somewhere in that range. So let's start the generator and see what we get. So good result. Seems it was the capacitor at fault, and this guy seems to be doing a good job. So the next step is to get a plug, because this is not safe. So subscribers of the channel will recognize this generator. I kept it for spares and I was going to reuse this, but as you guys can see, that is not going to work. So I'll have to go out and pick up a replacement plug to fit back onto this. Now I know it works. I have this one here. I guess I could use this plug, but I'd rather keep this on this because I would like to get this run at some point in the future. I don't seem to have any other sockets like that which would fit this application, so I'll just go out and pick one up. They're only £6-7, so I'll go and get that. Tonight is Halloween, so go and watch some horror films and pig out on some food and some sweets, and I'll come back tomorrow with a new plug. So it is a couple of days later. The engine has been cleaned, the stand has been cleaned and painted. I painted the stand using this stuff here. This is Hammerite hammered black. So if you have a rusty frame like this, where I've taken most of the paint off but I've not done a perfect job, I've just basically removed all the loose paint and scuffed it up, this stuff is brilliant for hiding them imperfections. So this engine had no oil in when I got it, which means there's a high probability that in the bottom of this crankcase there's going to be loads of built up sludge and gunk that normally you would heat the engine when the oil is warm, drain the oil. Obviously this had no oil in, so I've added oil to it, which has probably mixed it all up, so the oil inside is probably not that great. So I think the smart thing to do would be to start this, warm it up for a minute or two, turn it off, drain the oil and put fresh oil in. So the oil isn't terrible, but it's not great. So the carb, we haven't actually looked at the carb. It probably makes sense to at least inspect the bowl and the air filter. That's pretty clean. There's a bit of debris in the bottom, but that's not too bad. Well, I dropped it, so it's hard to see if there was much in there, but it's pretty clean. Put the bowl back on and maybe clean the fuel tank. The breather is okay. It's not full of mayonnaise or any signs of water, so that is a really good sign. Let's give the spark plug a check and see if that's in decent condition. Actually seems pretty good, so that's one less thing to replace on this. Yeah, so the gap is actually quite tight. It should be between 0.7 and 0.8, and that is not a 7. Probably more of a 0.6. Yeah, it's a comfortable 0.6. So if I just open that up a little, try again. So we're a comfortable 7 and tight 8. So it should be okay. Let's just do a quick compression check. Hopefully it's pretty decent. So 60, 70 psi is not good. So before I go any further, I think I'll check the valves, because hopefully they just need adjusting. So that is much better. It's 100 and 105 maybe, something like that. I wouldn't have thought the valves would have made that much difference. There wasn't that much adjustment, but clearly, well, that or the fact I wasn't pulling this hard enough maybe. So this is the fuel that we dropped from the carb. It's pretty grim. There's quite a bit of rubbish floating around, but there's no water, which is good. So I think we'll just dump this out and see what we get. give it a stir up. That is quite a lot of rubbish. Let's pour some fresh, well, I say fresh, the decent stuff back in. So while the tank was off, I give it a quick clean, nothing special, but it's a lot cleaner than it was. And this is the fuel that I've taken out. It's full of dirt, grime, bits of tree or something like that, a bit of fluff. So stuff you definitely don't want going into your carb. This does have a filter. The filter looks nice and clean, so I'm not worried about that. I did blow some air through the line into the tank and nothing came out the filter, so that should be okay. We know the float and the fuel bowl are both nice and clean, so we'll put this back on and we can call the fuel system done. So it has been a few days. The engine, as you guys will know, is back in the stand and it is supported, so that bit is done. I've glued this back on. It's pretty strong, so that shouldn't come off, and the next step will be this power plug at the back. I ordered one offline and I got this. Technically this is the correct plug, but the actual plate itself is way too big. So I picked this one up. This one is a little bit too big, so if we put it next to the yellow one and line them up in the middle, it's kind of like that. It's not ideal. Ideally I would like it to be the same height at the top, and obviously at the bottom I would like that to be the same, but it's not the end of the world. For what this is, this will be a site generator, so this will be perfectly fine. So the plug is installed. It, like I say, it's not perfect. It's a little bit too big, but that's fine for what this generator will be used for, which will probably be site work. That's fine. I've checked the connections with a multimeter and they're okay, so that side is good to go. I have put some replacement bolts in the bottom because it was missing, so this is nice and tight. This is now nice and tight. Redid the ground using brand new hardware, so that is a very good ground connection. I have half filled the tank with fresh fuel, and as you guys know, the tank is clean, so I think we are now ready to start the engine and tune it. I set this to 50 Hertz, which is fine. I just wanted to see if I was getting 230 volts at 50 Hertz, which I was, but on idle this should probably be 51 to 52. I'm probably going to get it for about 51.5, and that should give us maybe 240 on the output, but once under load that should drop down to maybe 230 and hopefully 49, 50 Hertz. If we can get this running on half load at about 49, 50 Hertz with 230, 235 maybe output voltage, brilliant. So the fuel has been on for a good 5 minutes and nothing has leaked, so let's get this started and tuned. So a bad capacitor, a faulty socket, bit of paint, a service, tune the valves, gap the spark plug, clean the tank, just general TLC. I could probably clean this up a bit more. This will just come off, but this will be essentially a site generator, I would have thought. This isn't the kind of generator most people tend to have on their property for power outages. So the condition this is in, I'm quite happy to say this is done. So I think we'll end this video here. It is quite long. I'm pretty sure it's quite long. I've been doing this now for a few days, so it's already quite a long video. So I'm going to end this one here. Thank you guys for watching. Like always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.